Welcome to the Change the Game podcast, where we are changing the game by doing business differently and highlighting stories of capitalism at its best. We believe that business has the potential to make a positive difference in the world and that we can make a real impact with society as a whole. I'm Steve Baker, Vice President of the Great Game of Business and co-author of our new book, Get in the Game: How to Create Rapid Financial Results and Lasting Cultural Change. We are really excited today because we have a special guest for National Employee Health and Wellness Day, Kim Coulter. And Kim has probably taken on one of the toughest roles at SRC Holdings, and that is to become Jack Stack's right-hand person after the retirement of Becky Lane. So those of you that know SRC probably remember Becky, and you will probably always remember Kim. So prior to coming to Holdings, though, she worked at one of our sister companies, SRC Remanufacturing, which is affectionately known as SRC Heavy Duty. And she served on the Wellness Committee for 3 years. Hi, Kim. Thanks for coming on. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Very well. So our theme is all about employee health and wellness. And I know you have a very important and deep story to tell. But before we get into that, let's talk about how SRC utilizes our Wellness Committee, because I think a lot of our listeners are looking to either create one for the first time or to enhance the one that they have created. Can you share some background on our Wellness Committee and how you got involved?
Yep. So I started, I'll start with a little story from my first day back in 16. It was actually the first day for Thin It to Win It. Everybody can't forget that. That was one that was hardcore, and it was my first day. I'm like, they'd asked if I wanted to, step on a scale and get in the contest. I was like, wow, that's open book management to a level I'd never seen or anything to do with wellness. I'm like, okay. I
think that goes beyond transparency to ask someone, especially a woman, hey, welcome to SRC. Let's weigh you.
Yeah. I was like, all right, if they're going to take this serious, I'll take it serious. So I had a baby a year before. I was like, all right, this is good. So definitely.
Well, you're a good sport.
Yep. And then Wellness Committee, just a kind of a high level overview of it. It is employee owners that from each of our divisions that to get together at our corporate office. They meet with our Director of Human Resources and Risks Management. We are also, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar, we are self-funded with our healthcare coverage. We kind of see the stuff that's coming up with risk. We talk about tons of educational pieces of different themes for each month, walks, runs coming up, what we can do to help our employees also have a great quality of life at home, and then also how that also affects their work life too. The better you feel about yourself, the better you're going to produce and be there every day.
I think that's a great point. I do have a question for you. So you mentioned meeting not only with HR, but with risk management. And I think for folks out there listening, they might not even have risk management as part of their day-to-day thinking, or much less a position of risk management. We just happen to be big enough to be self-insured, and we need risk management on a number of levels. Can you talk about that a little bit, why risk management is involved?
Yeah, definitely. And we also, he is our contact with our local, with Mercy and all the different facilitators here in town, that overview of all our contracts and negotiates and looks at the level of buy-in from us, from them, and also how do we also make sure that bottom line decreases and does not keep going up substantially.
So it really comes down to health and wellness can have a bottom line impact that's pretty substantial. And we've seen that happen firsthand, haven't we?
Right, correct. Because that also, it's a line on our income statement. If we are not doing well, or, we've had too many claims on top of how much we have put into the fund, that it comes across on a negative side.
So when we think about HR, risk management, health and wellness, I think that it does have a pretty big impact. We talked about financial. You mentioned something interesting, and that was if you feel better, you produce better. And
Right.
I remember talking with I think it was an ad agency several years ago, filled with creatives, writers and photographers and video people and designers. And what they said was they wanted to make sure people were in a good space, whether it's with their health, with their finances. In other words, they were worried about the whole person, because they said, we're in the creative business. I can't have people thinking about making rent or a car payment or a sick baby and have them produce their best creative work. Just because we do engines and engine components doesn't mean we don't have the same issues. I think that's something everybody listening could understand and appreciate, and hopefully implement something around it. Of course, awareness and education goes beyond just our healthcare costs.
Mhm.
Um, when we talk about organizational level or individual level, you've had a pretty serious story about health, and the idea of having a wellness program really affected you. Can you talk about your
Yeah,
personal story?
definitely. And also, I had been on the committee for about 3 years. And when I first got on, it was kind of, they were struggling to find people to actually be on the wellness committee too. So I was kind of wondering why was no one wanting to get onto this? And, I had kind of seen, all the GGOB training and been to all of it. And, I was like, hey, I need a stake in the outcome for this as well. And also, I'm a huge believer in human terms, putting everything into human terms.
Hmm.
Maybe they're not getting the stories, they're not understanding it and thinking it'll ever happen to them. Because that's who I was too. Never thought I would ever be sick. I stayed up with my yearly exams, my well visits, my physicals. But at the beginning of 2020 is when I started to not feel that great, to where I was kind of just having some pain in my chest to where it just wouldn't go away. I blamed it on hormones. I just thought it wasn't anything at all. Um, and then also I was like, this nothing's wrong. I'm mom, an employee. I have so much going on. And then
Just
and
like
then
the feeling of, maybe I'm a little older than I was
yeah.
last year. I know that feeling.
Yes, yes, not thinking it was anything. And then, I started dodging my kids' hugs to where I wasn't,
Oh my.
I was avoiding, and I was like, man, not happening. Not, I knew something was up. And then it was around that same time that I had noticed that, a program on one of our news channels that was talking about buddy check programs for breast cancer, and doing just a monthly exam, just a 1 day, just check and just make sure, there's nothing concerning. And then that's when I found it, to where I had found a lump on my left breast, where I was like, oh, that's not good. And I still played it off. It's like that, it's nothing, it'll go away. And then COVID, infamous COVID, hit right at the beginning of March. And I was like, I have to get checked. I need to get in. So I'd scheduled my first appointment in mid March, and then I wasn't able to get in till April. April 8th is when I've had my first doctor's visit. And then just kind of did the whirlwind from there, to where, they honestly thought it wasn't anything too concerning, but they're like, okay, we'll get you to a mammogram. Well, we'll get you to the next step, just to make sure that we don't think it is anything. But of course, something wasn't right. Something came up, and you're all alone. It's COVID. You're not allowed to have anybody with you. Um, so I went through that and spoke with the doctor at that time, and they told me that it was concerning. Go to the next step, and we did a biopsy, and then they came back 2 days later, said it was malignant, said it was cancer. I was just blown away. I had no family history, nothing to say, watch for this, see what's
Hmm.
coming on, what could happen. And then a week later, I had surgery. And then,
Wow.
yeah. And so right after that, after I had surgery, and this entire time I was working, we had the kids were not in school, the kids
Hmm.
were at home. We're trying to find, grandparents to watch the kids. We were both essential workers. My husband also works for SRC.
Hmm.
So we were both going back and forth. And at the same time, I have this on the back of my mind, and, thinking and worrying about all of this. But um, but yeah, started that, and luckily we got the results from the surgery. Came back, it was just still stage 1 and non-aggressive. It hadn't spread to my lymph nodes.
Thank goodness.
So I was one of the lucky ones. They say that my age, I was 38 at the time,
Mhm.
only 5% of women 40 and younger will be diagnosed with cancer. And they will
Wow.
also, they're more of them are diagnosed with such an aggressive cancer because they didn't know. They didn't know it was there.
So when I hear your story, I can feel the emotion coming up. I can definitely feel it, and if I recap it, I'm going, you went from, it's somebody else. It'll happen to somebody. It's not in my backyard, that sort of thing. Then awareness from not only the internal program, but then also with the KY3
Mhm.
local station encouraging, the buddy checks and that sort of thing. And then you did it. You kept up with your annual exams as well. That's the part I didn't hear. Did you have an annual exam scheduled in there somewhere, or is
I
that
was
part of the
actually
story?
in between. My yearly exams are in the summer. So I had just had a yearly exam in 19 that summer. So we're talking
No
maybe
problems.
months prior, not at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was just dumbfounding to think that, something could come on that fast. But I also credit too for my awareness of
Hmm.
our health insurance to use it. It's there. That's what we need it for, is stuff to be, preventative measures, or to also catch it at an early stage.
Exactly. And it's better for everyone. I mean, it's better for your family. It's better for you. You can heal faster. And I'm really glad that this is where the story is now. I
Mhm.
presume that you're on some sort of watch list
Yes.
from here for a few years. But man, what a wake up call, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in the annual physical too, because that's what all my brothers asked me, when I found out the same thing. It was like, how'd you find it? I said, well, I didn't know. I just
Yeah.
went to my physical. But so let's take it another direction at it for our listeners here. You also credit Great Game with helping you through this process, but I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Because now that I had surgery, then I had 20 rounds of radiation.
Hmm.
So I am now on a 5-year plan with my doctors. So, going back into that, we talk about all the time here, strategic planning, high involvement planning. What's our next 5-year goal, 5, 10 years? Where are we going to be? And it helps me with knowing my 5-year plan with my medical insurance and also my out of pocket. I will always look at that as to see, okay, I know I'm going to max my out of pocket. How do I budget and also plan with my family
Hmm.
to set the money aside so we know ahead of time that this is coming and not blindsided by it?
Right. I love how you did that. I mean, that's a very proactive thing to do, which psychologically is very healthy. I mean, you're saying I'm going to take the bull by the horns here. I've got to be prepared. It had to be tough, I would think, as a mom. Both of you are working. Your husband can't come into the doctor with you. Your mom can't come into I mean, you're all by yourself because of COVID rules when
Mhm.
you're going in and going to radiation probably every day for weeks on end to make it happen. But you kept yourself going and putting that goal out there. So is that part of what helped you also, is just going, I know I've got an end date here.
Yes, 100%.
That's
You
good.
look at the future and you take, like I told my husband, help me through the first days of it, and then the next day I'll kick its ass. Or sorry.
I think we got a good quote right there. That's a good soundbite. I love it. That's what an attitude. And I
Yeah.
hope that more people that are listening take that into effect. I mean, it's more than just um, healthcare in the
Right.
traditional sense. It's more than just medicine, right? And these days, especially with COVID, one of the things that we um, sometimes overlook. I feel like benefits in general are really undervalued and way underutilized. And I'm surprised by that how common it is, not just within SRC or even the Ozarks or Missouri. I mean, people I talk to all over the country, it's amazing how many folks, they can't get people to go to the doctor. They can't get them to go to their annual physical. They can't get them to take advantage of an FSA or an HSA. How can we help people learn more about how to use and appreciate what they have available to them?
I think especially we talk about open the books of your benefits. You never think that something like this could ever happen to you. And I think that's the big kicker, is that people think I'll never get sick. I'm
Mhm.
healthy. I don't need this, or I don't have time for it. You
Mhm.
have to make time for it, for you to be there for your family. Just, if anything, that to you want to be there for your family, and you want to, if there is something, catch it early, catch it to where you have a great life in the future with it.
Yeah, for sure. So we just are wrapping up the National Center for Employee Ownership Conference here this past week. And during the conference, I did hear a lot about mental health and the use of employee assistance programs during the pandemic, because mental health is such a real big issue with everybody being holed up and cabin fever and all. I mean, I'm not trying to make it light. I'm just saying, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of mental health issues out there. It was a crisis before, it's a real crisis now. Have you heard any stories, or do you know anybody that has used an EAP, an employee assistance program?
I personally haven't heard of anybody that has used it, but I do give SRC a ton of credit for talking about it on a
Hmm.
regular basis. We have it all over our bulletin boards, we have handouts. We talk about it as openly as we do the numbers, and
Hmm.
want people to get help if they have something that's going on. Just like me, you don't know what everybody's dealing with. It's time to take care of yourself and to talk to somebody from the outside. And then also, I'll be first to say I asked for help. I asked for help during this, and that was hard. That was hard to say, hey, I'm not doing well with any of this, and talking to my doctors and being able to get help. Um, I think that's kudos to just knowing that it's okay to ask.
Hmm. Yeah, and we're a tough company, so sometimes we have have to watch our culture and say, we're very helpful to one another, but it takes a lot of courage for you to come on here and be this vulnerable and share your story. I hope that everybody listening takes an example from you. Kim, what do you think about SRC as an employer? Has this changed, this experience, has this changed the way you see SRC as a company, as an employer?
Oh, 100%. It is a gratitude that I will always have, to a company that takes the time to work on their policies, to work on their healthcare, to work on their employees, and to put their employees first. That is something that I will always hold dear to my heart, and to also appreciate and know I will work a little bit harder, just knowing what is out there and what's available, and that they did this for me along with all the employees.
Yeah, and we sure appreciate your extra effort. I mean, being on the health and wellness committee does not mean that you get like extra hours or anything. You still have a full-time job, and I know your boss, so I know it's pretty intense. But it's really fantastic to. I mean, we talked about the actual medical part of it. I feel like we touched a lot on the family part of it, the emotional part of it, even the financial part of it, and how it affects not only your finances but the finances of the company, and therefore it rolls back into the community. So I think we covered most of it. I always like to wrap up the podcast by asking one more question, and that is, what's the question we didn't ask you? What should we be asking Kim Coulter?
Honestly, I think we covered it all, but I think if anything, just a statement of what a year we have all survived. I wish everyone could take a step back and realize that we have all been through so much this last year. Yes, I might have had a little bit more on my plate than others, but we
I would
all
say so. Yeah.
survived this chaos and this, this COVID, this pandemic that we never saw coming to this level. And to give each other credit for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think everybody listening should do like I'm going to do, which is take Kim's advice and like reach out, get some help for the first few the steps, and then kick its ass, whatever the issue is. So Kim, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, guys, let's keep the conversation going. Send us your questions, your stories, your best practices, your ideas, your challenges, and your victories. Remember, we want to hear your stories. These stories are about capitalism at its best. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.